Tag TV and Tag Radio. Be seen and heard by both technology users and technology producers throughout the state of Georgia and around the world. Low cost, big benefits, powerhouse online branded video and audio has arrived. Tag TV, Tag Radio, there's a lot more to know. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Madison Avenue executives from the Madman era would often use the cliche, 50% of my advertising works and 50% of it doesn't. I just don't know which 50%. Marketing as an expense simply has no place in today's digital economy. Marketing as an investment is when a company gets serious about moving marketing from a cost center to a revenue center. Greetings, everyone. It's Tuesday, September 2nd, 2012, and this is Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino Mantella. I'm your guest host, Frank Baia. Up to the Tech Talk, revenue marketing, the combination of well-orchestrated field and corporate roles and responsibilities that take a holistic approach to driving a repeatable, predictable, and scalable revenue result from marketing. Taking the Tech Talk to a revenue-positive position for your marketing expenses, Jeff Pedowitz. Jeff is the president and CEO of the Pedowitz Group, the authority on revenue marketing transformation, and a 2012 Inc. 500 company. He brings 20 years of leadership and a proven track record of delivering results to the Pedowitz Group. Jeff drives the company's strategic direction and oversees operations. Widely sought after for speaking and consulting engagements, he appears more than 20 times per year at key industry events and was named as Sales Lead Management Association's second most influential person for 2011. Prior to starting the Pedowitz Group, Jeff served as VP of Professional Services at Elqua, where he developed best practices for demand generation that are used by tens of thousands of marketers worldwide today. Jeff has also held leadership sales roles at SalesNet, Computer Associates, and SmartTime Software. Tech Talk takes on revenue marketing as a center of excellence with the authority on the subject, Jeff Pedowitz, President and CEO of the Pedowitz Group. Jeff, welcome to Tech Talk.
Thank you, Frank. Really nice to be here today.
You know, there's so many complex things that are just weighing on most entrepreneurs and most business people trying to keep up with all the technology and technological advances. And yet I think we all know that in order to stay competitive and really to make the best out of a ROI, we not only have to stay on top, but we have to kind of commit ourselves to making sure that we make a decision to do something, that we continue to do it and do it right. And where I'm headed is something that I know from an industry standpoint you're a leader in, and that is the whole concept of revenue marketing and the idea of a revenue marketing center of excellence. For our listeners, go into a little bit of detail about what that represents.
Sure. So revenue marketing in and of itself, it's an oxymoron. It's connecting marketing to revenue. So the joke's been around for years that 50% of marketing is working. I just don't know which half. Well, most boards of directors, most companies really won't go for that anymore when you can measure every other area of the business, improve upon it, optimize it. And marketing is no different. So marketing needs to be held accountable for its contribution to revenue. And so revenue marketing is that definition. And a revenue marketer is a marketer who makes sure and practices the science of attaching his or her project to a revenue discipline. And Center of Excellence is really building the operational controls, the mechanisms in order to deliver that, whether or not you do that internally, you outsource it, or there's some kind of combination.
Well, to help us to get a better grip on the subject and assuming, obviously, I mean, I love the oxymoron. There's no two ways about it. In fact, ironically enough, just the other day I used the term about 50% of it works and 50% of it doesn't. I just don't know which 50%. But for most of us, again, being versatile generalists, maybe relating it to a recognizable company. You know, name maybe a few that some of our listeners might recognize who have built and maintained a center of excellence.
Sure. Comcast, is one. Sage is another. McKesson is a third. LexisNexis, Dell. These are all companies that are going down the path of building centers of excellence. And so to have a center of excellence, you also have to undergo a transformation. We call it a revenue marketing transformation. How do you change from being cost-driven to being revenue and profit-driven? And no matter who you are or what company you work for, you're somewhere along the journey. You can be all the way at the beginning at traditional marketing. You're doing events, advertising. You're trying to get impressions and build your brand. You're most likely not using technology. Your processes are undefined, undocumented, and really you're just managing a budget center. Then many marketers move into lead generation. You're now responsible for at least filling the top of the funnel. You invest in search, you invest in email, and you have a monthly and a quarterly lead target, but you're still measured in the cost of lead acquisition. Then you move to demand generation, where you actually now start to partner with sales. You're not concerned with just filling the top of the funnel, but you're working with sales to take those leads and drive them to better conversion through the funnel. And for the first time, you actually, because you're talking about funnel conversion, marketing can have additional metrics that are tied to revenue. And finally, fourth, revenue marketing, which is the state you're trying to get to. You're doing all the things in demand generation, and you've invested in marketing automation and CRM, but now you can forecast it. You can walk in side by side with that head of sales and say, well, if we invest in these marketing activities for the next quarter, this is what we're going to do to the pipeline. And so as you go through that transformation, you need to understand what's your strategy, what's your revenue acquisition strategy, what people do you need to invest in, have you changed the organizational alignment, training, skills, KPIs, compensation structure, what processes need to change related to revenue lifecycle management, customer management, lead management. What technology do you need besides marketing automation and CRM? Do you need content, data, analytics, social? How does your content strategy change to drive demand? Instead of building product brochures, have you set up a buying cycle for your customers and your prospects? Have you aligned your content to those stages and to personas? And are you addressing the relevant gaps within that cycle? And finally, are you set up for analytics and ongoing measurement where you're tying your weekly dashboards to a revenue result? So these are all the components. We call those 6 things I just mentioned the RM6. They're the 6 controls that you need to drive towards transformation. And those companies that I just mentioned, they are practicing them day in and day out to build centers of excellence, to take accountability for their worldwide marketing operations as it relates to revenue.
Would you agree, though, that in a lot of cases, let's take McKesson, for example, not necessarily to focus on them particularly, but I think in many cases, if you've been around for even the last decade, you've certainly gone through many transformations and you have evolved. And so where they are today isn't necessarily a conscious decision that was made, say, last year, but rather one through trial and error and the evolution and the adoption of new technologies. I guess where I'm headed is I want to do this and I want to start out, but where do I begin? Do I start with a team, or do I start with identifying the strategy and beginning to lay? I mean, obviously transformation is a great word and on its surface sounds positive, but you're talking about radical change if I'm not already involved in doing this. So maybe a little bit about what are the roles and the competencies of, say, team building, and is that really the first step? Do we build a revenue marketing center team?
Well, you bring up a lot of good points. I mean, if you pursue change from the sense of radical change, then you'll never get anywhere, because change for anybody is you resist it. It's a foreign concept. So to truly drive change, you have to start off in smaller baby steps. Now, you have to have stakeholder alignment. Someone at the company has to say, well, we do want to start moving forward. We do want to become revenue marketers. We do want to have marketing be held accountable for it. So there has to at least be a corporate organizational vision to start the journey. But many people do start off with small things like sales and marketing alignment, getting sales and marketing in the room and coming up with a shared definition of a lead for a first time. The other lead routing rules. Service level agreements. What happens once marketing distributes the lead? How long does sales have to follow up with it? Who does it go to? When does it get recalled back? When does it get nurtured? And so on. So just doing some of these basic things can start driving change in a very formulative way, because many times sales and marketing don't collaborate at all. Marketing does the proverbial messaging and the programs, and sales is out in the field scrambling and trying to bring in customers. So just trying to bring the two together and have some shared goals and mutual alignment is a good first step.
Is it a cultural component to this in terms of old school, new school, traditionalist versus maybe a millenniumist, if such a term? In other words, we talk about people that have come from a digital environment right from their beginning of their high school and college days that live in Salesforce, live in Twitter, and understand that involvement. We talk about mixing sales and marketing together. I guess really I'm thinking if I was trying to develop this and I wanted to develop a team, is there such a thing as a best place to recruit these kind of folks, and what kind of folks would I be looking for?
Well, I mean, certainly it's always going to be cultural, and it's also always going to be political. And the bigger the company, the more culture and politics you're going to run into, and that's as big of an impasse as anything else. Now, just because you're younger and then you have a strong affinity for technology because you've grown up in a digital world doesn't necessarily mean that you understand how to use those tools from a corporate perspective, or that the tools that you use to communicate with your friends are necessarily the same tools that you use for business. Now, Facebook's been effective for many, many companies, but not all. There's a lot of B2B companies where their core audience does not engage in Facebook, even though maybe the individuals might have individual accounts, but it's not a viable social channel. However, there could be other social channels, whether it's a community group or a posting or LinkedIn forum that could have more relevance to that company. So where do you find the people? Well, like all things in life, to find one person that does everything is very rare. So what you're really trying to do is identify the roles. And that really starts off with who's going to run the show? Who's the VP of Revenue Marketing? And typically this is either a marketer that has a sales background or someone that comes from sales or sales ops and has a bent towards marketing. So someone is looking at all the activities of marketing with basically revenue glasses on it. So they're just really trying to make sure that all the spend, all the programs are set up toward the revenue focus. Then you have to have some kind of power user based upon the tools that you select. So running marketing automation and CRM, whether it's Salesforce, your content management system, your social platform. This could be one person, but you might need several. You need a content specialist that really understands how to write smaller, fragmented pieces of content that could be dispersed and syndicated across multiple channels and multiple formats. You need a nurture specialist who understands how to set up long-term conversations through an email drip dialogue. You need to have a business analyst that can go into these systems and pull out the relevant data and turn it into information so that managers can make better decisions. You need copywriters, people that know how to write for different personas across multiple spectrums, whether it's a blog, an email, or a landing page. And so all these people kind of form a revenue marketing team, if you will. And some of those things you can do internally, and some of those things you might end up outsourcing. But they all become part of your revenue center of excellence. And whether you choose to centralize that and have kind of an operations team and a demand generation team, or you distribute it, that's a little bit different for every organization.
Well, listening to you as anyone does to an expert that obviously has the confidence of having past experience and knowledge, the first thing that probably comes to my mind is, do I really want to learn how to fly the plane, or do I want to get a pilot to take me there? I guess my question, you mentioned outsourcing versus insourcing. Certainly there's got to be, I'm guessing, speed to market and being able to get up and running and be competitive as quick as you possibly can without necessarily going to a learning curve, are just beginning to describe some of the benefits of, say, outsourcing something like this. But tell us a little bit about the benefits of outsourcing versus insourcing.
Well, what you get with outsourcing is ideally you're getting a company that already has defined processes, already has the technology set up and is running, and really can kind of hit the ground running and not make a lot of the mistakes that you would make. And then you're paying them to drive towards the result. And many times, if you look at the individual price per person, it's more, but the overall value is more. So you actually end up paying less to get an outsourcer to perform the service than you would if you could hire the people directly. You can still own the strategy and the overall direction, but you're relying on the outsourced firm to provide the cadence and the run rate. And certainly doing it internally, if you have a culture of owning it internally and you think that this is something that you want to have a competency in, there's going to be a bit longer of a learning curve. But again, it also depends upon who you have on your team. I mean, if you've brought people in specifically because they've done this at other companies before, then you're probably in a different position. You don't necessarily need to rely as much on outsourcing because you have the capabilities in-house. And again, it also goes to culture and politics. If the company has a history of doing things internally, you're going to probably continue to go down that route, or you might just do some short-term outsourcing and training, but quickly look to get your team up and running within 90 days. On the flip side, if you typically outsource most of the major functions like search and PR and others, then this might just be one more thing that you outsource.
My last question, I think, might be, as far as a lot of our listeners are concerned, one of the more important ones. I jokingly think, show me the money, show me the money. How do you measure success?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to measure it. I mean, look, at the end of the day, there's not an exact science. You'll never be able to say that marketing specifically brought in this much money exactly because there's just too many variables. The sales team, of course, working on the sales cycle, pricing changes, market conditions, competition. But you can show marketing contribution to the pipeline. You can show marketing's impact on the dollar value of a deal, marketing's impact on the length of a sales cycle, marketing's impact on conversion metrics as leads go through the funnel. And all of those things are valuable marketing metrics. Ultimately, marketing still only gets measured by one thing anyway, which is the return on marketing spent. So if the CFO gives you $1 to begin the year for your budget, how many dollars of revenue does the company return in net new revenue that year? If the amount is the same or went down from last year, guess what? You're going to be fighting for your life to get your budget increased, more likely than not getting cut. If you can show a sustainable increase in your overall return on marketing spend, then you're going to be in a much better position to ask for more budget.
Well, Jeff, obviously the subject is critically important to a lot of our listeners simply because of the competitive posture of today's marketplace. One thing for sure, a great conversation to get people thinking. I think more important to get them to look at and find out more about revenue marketing and certainly find out about more about your company. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today on Tech Talk.
Thank you, Frank. It's great to be on the show. I really appreciate it.